Sure. Ground reports. How about y'all? Y'all doing great? Yeah. Last round. Those are the
All right, good morning. So is everybody good on the flip and all that? We're all squared away and
Yeah.
cool beans. Are there any questions for us as judges? All righty.
Yeah, so I think before we get started, we can set up an email chain. Y'all can just pop your emails in the chat and all the judges that want to be a part of it.
Yes, I'd like to be, yeah.
My email's in my paradigm if you don't already have it.
Cool, I'll get it.
All right, and I am gonna be back in like 3 minutes, and at that point, I'm cool to start.
So I'm gonna go refill my water after this.
Six people. That's
All right, I just sent it off.
I received it.
I also got it.
I got it as well. Hey everyone, I am having an issue with a panel for one of my kids. So just give me like until 9:30 and then we can start. But I think I need to handle this right now.
And I'll just say I have had slight worries about my internet. I have enabled my hotspot as well. If I do drop off, I don't think it will, but if I do, I'll be back in like 30 seconds. So just hopefully that doesn't happen, but if it does, that's how it'll play out.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I'm ready to go.
Right, no worries. Yeah, I'll just confirm that you guys got the email chain and then I'll get started. Alright, cool. In that case, Churchill speaking Ned first. Everybody good to go? We negate contention one is the Asia War. U19 explains for the past 40 years, East Asia has enjoyed relative stability. Article 9 has been key to preserving this peace. As Tonison 17 explains, Article 9 reduced fears of resurgent Japanese militarism from the perspective of China and North Korea, constituting an extended US and establishing international relations. Because of Article 9, East Asia's two main powers avoided the use of force. A prerequisite for peace to last even longer is that Japan and China uphold their defensive military doctrines. CFR 14 explains that China still has deeply rooted apprehension of Japan repeating its militaristic mistakes. And as such, China historically reacted terribly to any change in Japanese military policy. After Japan's reinterpretation of Article 9 in 2014, Chang 14 reports confrontation increased with both countries looking to extend their claims to territorial waters and airspace. Last month, McCrory 22 explains China reacted angrily to calls by Abe for Tokyo to consider hosting US weapons. Sterling 20 explains that China will dislike whatever Japan proposes in collective self-defense and perceive it as Japan's remilitarization, and China has not forgotten Japan's imperialism and remains mistrustful today. If Article 9 is revised, Japan's self-defense will be allowed to engage in military operations with no restrictions on nuclear weapons, damaging relations with China, North Korea, South Korea, and international systems as a whole. The revision causes a war in Asia, as Sterling 20 explains. China is lurking in Japan's territory and has new nuclear capacity. The relationship between both countries is not stable, especially with disputes over the Senkaku Islands. Work 20 explains that if Japan can react to provocations in a more military aspect, it likely will turn cold tensions hot. In the event of armed conflict, North Korea will likely come to the aid of China and attack Japan, as Kim Jong-un has made rhetoric, including wanting to sink Japan. Liv 15 explains a conflict between China and Japan will have catastrophic consequences, and if China fears an attack on its command system, China might even preemptively strike using its nuclear weapons while it still can. Our second argument is a proliferation spillover. Sterling 20 explains that if Japan amends Article 9, East Asia is put into jeopardy in three ways. First, G2 explains that it is a real risk for Japan to neutralize, as Japan's right-wing politicians are fanatical about nuclear weapons, and Japan has top computer systems than plutonium, which can produce about 6,000 bombs overnight. Empirics prove, as Beer confirms, in the absence of Article 9, Japan would likely become one of the few nuclear powers. Second, Tonison explains that Article 9 has caused other Asian countries to emulate Japan's military doctrine. Japan became an explicit model for East Asia, including countries like South Korea, Singapore, Indonesia, Taiwan, Malaysia, and more. Sterling 20 explains that a revision will destroy one of the most important models of a demilitarized state. Independently, Wadsworth explains that offensive capacity might be interpreted by neighbors as a sign that Tokyo is losing confidence in US credibility, starting a chain reaction that causes more US allies to develop their own strike capacities. Third, Siegel 7 explains that Japan has been protected from the security dilemma by its constitution. Japan has one of the highest levels of military spending in the world, but if Article 9 is changed, Japan's military potential is a threat to its neighbors. And Article 9 revision is more dangerous than ever, as Sterling 20 explains that there are new threats in Asia, including chemical, biological, and cyber weapons, and Japan has entered territorial disputes with Russia, South and North Korea, and Taiwan. Siegel 7 continues that a change in Article 9 constitutes an instantaneous arms buildup in Asia, and Gibler 05 quantifies that during an arms race, the chance of war increases by 500%. Kimbala 14 explains that failure to contain proliferation spreads a nuclear fervor throughout the world in Asia, increasing the chance of nuclear war. And APA explains that a 0.5% use of the world's nuclear arsenal puts 2 billion lives at great risk. Independent of this, the Allison of Kent State also confirms that states with nuclear weapons are 54% more likely to start proxy conflicts because of deterrence, and these conflicts would be similar to the one in Yemen, for example, which has put 22 million people in need of humanitarian aid. For this reason, we negate. Do you guys see anything? If you do, if you could just put it in the chat, that'd be great.
Okay. Sully, do you need evidence? No? All right. Is everyone ready for the affirmative case? We affirm contention one is building bridges. Siddharth 18 finds that the drive for resources like oil will lend itself to greater conflicts in the future, and the security environment will destabilize until a regional actor like Japan can restore balance. Sugawa 2000 writes that Japan will pursue confidence-building measures aimed at reconciliation with neighbors to build regional support for Japan's use of force. Amending Article 9 compels Japan to directly address the history issue and will speed the establishment of an Asian multilateral security framework promoting regional security. Absent this, Chapter Party 10 finds that the Asia-Pacific is emerging as the center of the world. Regional disputes can snowball into major conflict, possibly turning nuclear. Contention 2 is Six Eyes. CF20 indicates that Japan has voiced increasing interest in joining the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. Whedon 20 finds that Article 9 states that intelligence gathering is unconstitutional if another country uses Japanese intelligence to form part of a military force. Guantao 21 concludes that institutional obstacles for Japan to join Five Eyes may become reasons for Japan to push for constitutional amendment. Panda 20 finds that Five Eyes will benefit from Japan's extensive intelligence in East Asia to counter China's attempts to upend U.S. international order. Japan will bring political credibility to an alliance of English-speaking countries, projecting more multipolar engagement that can curb China's growing dominance. Keck 14 explains that hegemonic transition periods have historically been the most destabilizing eras. The rise of new global powers necessitates dangerous primary great power conflicts. Dow 15 finds that the next great power war would involve nuclear weapons involving miscalculation. Contention 3 is global conflict. Subpoint A is security guarantees. Tab 22 explains that in a widening window of American weakness, defense spending will be close to post-Cold War lows. Crab 221 finds that a sense of disappointment is taking hold amid a lack of U.S. focus. Washington's efforts look insubstantial. Affirming Seoul as having a wealthy and capable ally like Japan take responsibility for its own defense allows the U.S. to redirect attention where it's needed most, saving alliances. Panton 10 finds that the threat of America's inability to maintain hegemonic balance in Asia due to economic restraint encourages constitutional reform debates in Tokyo. Japan needs to be able to defend itself independently to reassure the larger region of America's commitment. All of 21 explains that the Asia Pacific plays an important role in international affairs, home of half the world. The world order will be shaped by politics of the Asia Pacific, and the U.S. has to play its role in it. Brand 17 explains that U.S. alliances deter aggressors by meaning a fight with the world's most formidable military. Guarantees allow allies to avert the arms races in earlier eras. Barnett 11 confirms that the U.S. military resulted in a 99% drop in deaths due to war, with Man 14 finding that reduced ally confidence in America's security guarantee causes instability with WMDs. Subpoint B is the Security Council. Mofa 16 explains that Japan has been a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 11 terms, more than any other state. Shinen 05 finds that for years Japan has wanted a permanent seat on the Security Council. Article 9's ambiguous language makes it unclear whether Japan would be able to meet its responsibilities as a permanent member. Permanent membership will amplify Japan's influence. The DPJ 05 explains that in East Asia, diseases are on the rise. Japan's official development assistance can help curb the spread of epidemics. The number of nuclear nations has grown. It is the strong leadership of non-nuclear Japan that is urgently called for to reverse these trends. Japan should also facilitate a climate change prevention regime involving the US, China, and other developing countries, including that in order to take leadership in these endeavors, Japan must be a permanent member of the UNSC. Reckon 21 explains that pandemics, climate change, and resurgent nuclear threat making can annihilate the human species. Even without permanent status, Article 9 revision will make Japan's voice far louder, achieving the same effect. Panton 10 confirms that Japan, if it revises Article 9, will increase its diplomatic influence under UN mandates and would mark Japan as a new global leader. Subpoint C is the Middle East. Reinhold 02 finds that Japan could play a major strategic role in the Middle East. However, Japanese foreign policy has severely constrained by its peace constitution. In the Middle East, Japan can only choose policy options dictated by the US. Fortunately, Ho 18 writes as Japan increases military influence, it would seek to find new partners in the Middle East. Sahel 20 finds that Japan has many cultural and historic soft power assets, providing a popular support among rival parties in the region, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Japan is uniquely poised to play a mediating role between regional adversaries, the drivers of instability. Tukunia 22 finds that the Middle East is a growing nucleus of raging conflicts as the perpetual antagonism between Arab states and Iran builds. Sterling 11 finds that any Middle Eastern war would be a case of use your WMDs or lose them to enemy strikes. Usage will result in the spread of radioactive fallout around the world. Thus, save lives, please affirm. Okay. Do you need evidence or are you good for cross?
Yeah, can I see some ev real quick?
Yeah.
On Six Eyes, the Constitution is the barrier that prevents other countries from using Japanese intelligence for military purposes. And then the second one is that Japan must be a permanent member of the Security Council in order to adopt change. I'll stay on mute so you know that Allison and I aren't prepping while you get that. If you hear any noise, they're like doing construction outside my house, so that might be it.
You're good.
So hopefully that doesn't distract anyone. Okay, I'll let you know when I get it.
Okay, I just received. Usually Abby gets it like 30 seconds after me.
My internet's kind of bad, but let me refresh. Okay, got it.
Okay. First question is all yours.
Time begins now. Let's talk about your contention about Six Eye. Why is it important that they're a permanent member instead of just like having independent alliances between the countries that are part of like Five Eyes?
Because if they're part of Six Eyes, they can actually help the Six Eyes Alliance counter China. If they're not a part of Six Eyes, they can't help Five Eyes counter China.
Why?
Can I have a question?
Like that doesn't really answer the question. Like I can have an independent bilateral relationship with you or like between these countries, but I don't have to be a part of the alliance to show that I'm with the alliance, right?
Yeah, because our evidence indicates that if you're not part of the Five Eyes Alliance, Japan cannot utilize their intelligence gathering capabilities. They can't share intelligence with the rest of the Five Eyes Alliance because they physically are not part of the alliance. Article 9, revised Article 9 changes that. Can I have a question? Okay, so on your first contention, you say that there'll be an all-out nuclear war with China because China will preemptively strike with a nuclear weapon. If China has a no first use policy where China cannot strike first with a nuclear weapon, how will this escalate into a nuclear war?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. Number one, China has explicitly stated that they're going to reverse their no first use policy in the absence that Japan changes its or revises Article 9 of its constitution. And the reason why is that it perceives like any change to Article 9 as a significant threat to like China as a whole.
So you have
that's
evidence
why.
saying that, yeah, so you have evidence saying that when Japan revises Article 9, China will get away with its no first use policy.
Yeah, well, that's what the Chinese like foreign ministers have said. Like they will use, like they are going to attack if like it changes.
Okay, you have a question.
Let's talk about the Middle East. What incentives does Japan have to mediate? I understand like they could be a good mediator, but why would they want to get involved with like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and EU?
So one, we say that Japan has economic dependence, they have economic interest in the overall Middle Eastern region. If the Middle Eastern region is in conflict, obviously that wouldn't be good for Japan. But second, our evidence is very specific, saying that as soon as you revise Article 9, Japan increases military influence, it branches out to seek new partners in the Middle East. That's what's also giving an additional incentive to do a good mediator in the Middle East. We say uniquely why Japan is good is because Japan has a great history of soft power versus countries like the United States or Russia, who've only just been starting conflicts in the Middle East. Can I have a question?
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
Where exactly is this like war going to occur in the Middle East?
Between the Arab states such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, et cetera, and Iran. There's growing tensions right now about as people are burned to war. Yes, and Iran. Can I have a question?
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about Japan proliferating. If Japan is the only country that has ever been struck with a nuclear weapon, obviously the public has a bad view towards nuclear weapons. Why would the public ever want Japan to proliferate nuclear weapons if they physically in their history have been hit and affected by nuclear weapons before?
Okay, we're almost out of time, but number one, the right-wing politicians are gaining power, and they're super fanatical about it. And number two, the public opinion has swayed since like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which proves that they're more likely and open to use nukes. We'll probably run some prep.
Real quick, sorry, I forgot to call for one piece of evidence from the F case. Can I call for the Crabtree evidence on your C3 subpoena?
It's sent.
Okie doke. I will let you know when I get it. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, I got it as well. We're gonna run some prep. Okay, that was 5 seconds. The order is just gonna be down my page. Is everyone ready? Judges, opponents, all good. Okay, cool. Sorry, let me just plug in my computer real quick. It's like probably gonna start spasming in the middle of the speech if I don't. Okay, cool. Now is everyone ready? Everyone's ready. Time starts. Now let's start off on their C1 on building bridges. The New York Times finds in 2015 that Japan has already reiterated its support for official apologies for the country's imperial expansionism, and Japan said they don't want to inflict immeasurable damage and suffering ever again on innocent people and reconcile the grievance of the past. That means that there's no uniqueness on their side because it doesn't matter if Japan revises Article 9. They've already apologized. This has already happened. If anything, I would turn the argument. Right now, diplomacy is working. Thornton finds that engagement aimed at shaping cooperation and diplomacy have fundamentally changed China and the East China Sea over the past 40 years can become a major contributor to peace and prosperity in the East Asia that has enjoyed over the same time period. In fact, their own evidence literally says that Japan is committed to cooperation and dialogue to counter insecurity in the region. That's one of the main reasons for initiation of framework that has been the new face of a threat, which is non-conventional and transnational, makes it really difficult for an actor to deal with isolation. Unfortunately, Roth 22 finds that policymakers in Beijing judge Tokyo's attitude to become too anti-China requires a refocus on competition and punitive measures of some kind, similar to those inflicted on other countries guilty of provocations, which Wadsworth finds increases heightened mistrust and increases the likelihood of a gray zone conflict escalating into war. On 6 eyes. The argument isn't true anymore because Japan is moving closer. As of 3 days ago, Mackenzie 22 finds that Japan and New Zealand have opened talks for agreement for seamless sharing of classified information, a step that strengthens Tokyo's case to eventually join Five Eyes. In addition, Mackenzie 22 finds that a major overhaul in 2013 of Japanese law alleviated any concern or unease about the sharing of Japanese intelligence. In fact, Mackenzie finds that Japan has already negotiated intelligence sharing agreements with the United States, Britain, and Australia. They don't provide any sort of warranting as to why Japan has to be a part of the Five Eyes or now 6 Eyes specifically in order to share the intelligence. Clearly, it's already happening. GN21 finds that in addition, they probably shouldn't join the Five Eyes alliance because the joining of Asian nations would come with sizable costs, especially in relation to China, and would cause China to retaliate. Finally, Oxford Analytics 21 finds that Japan's partners still run a risk of leaks to Japan flag and cybersecurity institutional agreements, which means that more Japan sharing is bad. On their C3, on security, recognize that U.S. hegemony is not declining. Maisland evidence, which postdates their Crabtree evidence by 6 months, finds that in response to China's increased assertiveness, recent U.S. administrations have shifted strategic focus into the Indo-Pacific, strengthening military and economic ties with partners in the region, including Japan. That's why their evidence literally concludes the Pans and 10 evidence says that the U.S. has sought to reassure both Japan and larger region of America's commitment. In fact, we say that Japan is probably never going to counter China's influence because Wadsworth 19 finds that most experts agree it would be at least a decade before Japan would have usable independent conventional missile strike capability, which means that when the U.S. leaves the region, China is expanding unopposed. Wadsworth 19 turns the argument as well, finds that Japan's offensive capability would be interpreted by neighbors as reliant on the U.S. nuclear umbrellas, a sign that Tokyo is losing confidence in the U.S. credibility, starting a chain reaction that causes more U.S. allies to hedge with China to develop their own strike capabilities, increasing instability in Asia, which Gibler 05 finds that would increase the chance of war 500% due to massive regional arms race that undermines security. Also, Japan is already committed to defending against Chinese encroachment. They don't prove any uniqueness as to why they need offensive military to do so, insofar as Roth 22 finds that political elite have become eager to push back against China's encroachment around the disputed Senkaku and Diaoyu Islands as pressure on Taiwan and its human rights abuses. Onto the Security Council. House 16 finds that the G4 group would most likely need support of the African Union, a tough task. Indeed, the last time any country tried to gain support from the African Union in 2005, it failed miserably. This has not changed much, meaning that Japan could never actually be on the Security Council. The source furthers that China has a permanent seat on the UN Security Council and the power to veto any reform push, and China is adamantly opposed to Japan having a permanent seat, which is why it can never happen. The source further continues that the UN Security Council would not be able to make prompt and effective decisions if enlarged. More diverse and conflicting opinions in the UNSC would make it more difficult and time-consuming for them to come to an agreement. That's critical because it would be incredibly counterproductive for that region. There's not going to be any reform. There's no warranting as to why they need UNSC permanent seating to adopt anti-pandemic measures. Real quick on the Middle East, Solomon 21 finds that Japan's foreign minister Motegi visited Egypt, Palestine, Europe, Jordan, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Qatar as part of a regional tour focused on Middle Eastern security as the US starts to pull out, which means that they still are doing this. Additionally, their Ho 18 evidence finds that Japan has been reluctant to cultivate political ties with Jewish states, mainly because of reliance on energy supplies. Thus, they're not going to start to mediate controversially because they have to maintain good relations with these countries. In addition, economic interdependence with the U.S. means karaoke diplomacy doesn't happen anyways. or it happens anyways.
I cut out. What was your last response on security guarantees?
Let me see. I think it was Roth 22. Political elite have become eager to push back against China's encroachment
Oh,
on
okay,
its
okay.
value islands.
Yeah. Can you send the evidence for the first response on Security Council, the G4?
Yeah,
And then also Japan sharing information right now. That's it.
got it. Yeah, of course. Let me grab that. Okay, they're both sent.
I'll let you know when I get them. Okay, I just got them. So did you get them?
Let me see. Yeah.
Let's take prep. I'll hold up my timer to show when we start. Start. Okay.
All right.
35 seconds used.
It's just gonna be our case, their case. Everybody ready? All right. Let's begin now. So on our contention one, there's a massive strategic blunder. They say that Japan has already apologized for all their war crimes. It takes out their case because all the warrants they read in their contention one and contention two is country you're scared of Japanese militarization because of historical atrocities. So if they've already apologized for it, that means there's no threat. It takes out their case. It doesn't take out ours because our evidence says Article 9 prevents military cooperation. On the turn, they read on our contention one, they've conceded conflicts inevitable, which also takes out their case because of resource wars. And our evidence indicates that you can only do economic aid right now. So affirming is key to military cooperation. Then on 6 sides, they said there's open talks, even if there's small talks right now, they can't join or sell intelligence. Their second non-unique about already negotiating is just not enough. Our evidence says they can't do wide-scale intelligence sharing because of Article 9. We need revision. They say it would hurt the relationship with China, but they've conceded that China is already expanding right now and will cause wars. And they've conceded the link that says intelligence preempts Chinese militarization. We short circuit on the cybersecurity turn. Our evidence says cybersecurity is increasing right now due to new relations and cooperation with the U.S. On the security guarantee, they read you a non-unique, but our evidence posted from TEB this year, which they can see that the U.S. is decreasing budget, is increasing U.S. influence, so will not be able to prevent the next war. They say they're countering China, but our evidence is they can just use the weapons to deter China, and it's not about countering China, it's about increasing U.S. influence in the region to increase the U.S. security guarantee, which is key to saving hundreds of millions of lives globally. They say they're losing confidence. It's a cross-application of their case, but they've conceded a link that we redistribute military resources to countries around the region so that prevents any type of decrease in assurance. Then on Security Council, they talk about the African Union, but they've conceded since they've been a non-permanent member, they have wide-scale support. They say China will veto, but our evidence says China will veto if Japan gets a 2/3 support, and given that they're a non-permanent seat, that's going to happen. They will have to say it's counterproductive, but our evidence says they will use the big countries inside of the Permanent Security Council, the global powers, to push through these good policies. And they've conceded if they don't get in the Permanent Security Council, Article 9 revision increases their influence in the UN to push this through. On the Middle East, they say they're already visited. Sure, one visit happens, but our evidence says they can't do mediation, which is why they've conceded conflicts are increasing. They say they're reluctant, but the whole evidence includes the affirming would increase cooperation with the Arab and Iran states to prevent any type of conflict because of an economic incentive. Last, they say karaoke diplomacy is non unique, but the use is pulled out of the region under Article 9. They physically cannot do anything now. On Convention 1, 3 responses. One, it's non unique. Beckley 21 explains that Beijing is a revisionist power who fears they can have finite period to achieve objectives. War and hotspots will be real as Beijing lunges for objections. We solve this. Sadaris 18 explains the People's Republic of China desire for hegemony goes undeterred because Article 9 hampers the effectiveness of the Japanese self-defense force and contributing to regional security. Secondly, there's no escalation because 199 explains that Japan's global amendment is not to initiate a power struggle. If Article 9 were amended, Tokyo would remain a passive subclause. Secondly, O'Malley explains the lack of military aggression by a cooperative spirit by Japan would mitigate fears, opening the door for resolution. Lastly, there's no link because Chang 14 explains China's response to a post-pacifist Japan will understand that escalating tensions is neither desirable nor beneficial. Despite the rhetoric, China will act with restraint, which is why there's no preemptive strike with restraint in 2014. On Japan, Prolif 1 is not unique because Charlie 21 explains Japan's constitution prohibits the acquisition of offensive weapons, but nuclear weapons have an intrinsic defensive nature, so they can develop it now. Then, secondly, there's no link. Proliferation doesn't happen because one, public opposition to Lobson 18 explains public opinion is much more negative towards nuclear weapons than amending Article 9. Secondly, the Senate deterrence, Basu 20 writes that Tokyo's decision not to go nuclear is influenced by calculations that acquisition would adversely affect US-Japan relations. And lastly, these vetoes, 114 explains that Japan couldn't go all the way. The process would be thwarted by veto players, government officials who resist the program before it reached fruition. On modeling 1, there's no link. Gustafsson 19 furthers that Japan adopted pacifism to convince its neighbors it was no longer a threat after the Second World War. States that do not find themselves in a similar situation would have no incentive to model. Secondly, it's not unique because Gustafsson 19 finds Japan's pacifism was an alternative approach to security policy which failed to become internationally popular. The peace is collapsing now as Bush 19 confirms the East Asian peace. It may be ending a major power conflict is more likely resolved as Kimura 19 finds Japan needs offensive capabilities that can take part in joint military action. The Sung 18 finds alongside partners, Japan can influence arrangements in favor of the US. Then on losing confidence, you can turn it because Kaufman 08 writes that a Japan more capable of defending itself would provide the US with the able partner to promote international security. Japan's increased involvement would bolster the credibility of American multilateralism, empirically proven as Richter writes that Article 9 reinterpretation increased cooperation with the US. On arms race, cross-apply all the escalation responses and the turns US influence solves. Panton 10 writes that when the Constitution is revised and US countries stay active in the region, Japan's increased capability should not be stabilizing. Lastly, there's no war. As Sapolsky 14 explains that Asia's stable political regimes, government leaders are accountable, and they don't have a history of lobbying missiles at each other. They would be responsible nuclear states. No proxy war, no impact there whatsoever.
Allison, do you know any Ev?
No, but we're gonna take a little bit of prep before cross.
Wait, real quick, can I get some Ev then? Can I just get your response on US cred declining, that US credibility would increase? Thank you.
I sent it.
Okay, I'll let you know when I get it, and then we can start cross. Actually, no, we're gonna take prep after that, actually.
I got it.
Okay, give me 1 sec to refresh it now. Okay. We'll run some prep.
That was 20 seconds.
Okay. Are you ready for cross? Cool. Can I take first question? Cool.
Yep.
So on China, in order to deter against China, why does Japan need an offensive military capability if they're already doing that defensively?
Because under Article 9, Japan can only respond to China after they get attacked. So for example, China can use missiles that take out their missile defense systems in a strike. So our argument is they need offensive weapons to deter a conflict in the first place, which is why China's hegemony is being unchecked now and revisions increasing in their starting conflicts.
Wait, real quick, can you just clarify? Like, I don't understand why they need the attack, the ability to preemptively strike in
It's
order
not
to
preemptively strike. It's that right now, only they can respond to China after their attack. So China can use, like you say, attacks that take out
defensive.
Japanese capabilities. Yes, that's why it doesn't work right now. So our
Are you
argument is
advocating preemptive strike?
No. Our armies just need offensive. They need to be able to use their weapons offensively, their military offensively, to act as a deterrent. Can I have a
Wait,
question?
but they can use them offensively in response to China, right?
I know, but that means that already China launches the attack and the conflict happens. Our argument is that they need to be able to prevent the conflict in the first place. That is the
How?
military realist concept of deterrence.
Wait, can you just tell me like how they would prevent? How can them striking first prevent a conflict from happening if they're not going
Like if China now knows that Japan can attack first, now China is dissuaded from aggressing because Japan can check them preemptively, right? So our argument is reactive capabilities is bad. No, it's not it's not like a preemptive strike. It's just that it's deterrence. Like you can look at the evidence. It's phenomenal explaining this. It's been 1:30. Can I have a question?
For it, yeah.
Yeah. So insofar as you explained that Japan has apologized for its historical crimes and imperialism, and given that the warrant you read in your case for escalation is imperialism, doesn't that mean that's already solved for?
No, because the point of the apology response was that Japan's already trying to build bridges with allies, like in the Pacific region.
I understand the point of the response, but the implication to your case is that you read in case that China and other countries would get mad because of fears of imperialism. So if Japan has already apologized and says no matter what they do with their military, they will never be imperialist or aggress. Doesn't that seem pretty contradictory given your link?
No, not at all, because allies of Japan are going to trust Japan's apology. Adversaries of Japan are not going to trust Japan's word, and they're going to still.
Okay, so then that means that there's going to be no arms race, because your argument is an arms race with allies in the region, and your second argument about modeling is talking about allies who model Japan's peaceful development would increase militarization. So that still takes out half of your case.
Modeling whatsoever.
Well, you read modeling in your contention.
Yeah, but apologies don't have anything to do with modeling.
Well, all of the links in your argument, in your case, are contingent on the fact that countries perceive that militarization is bad, whether that be allies or adversaries. If you are reading an argument in rebuttal, it's saying that countries
not necessarily that adversaries or allies perceive that militarization is bad. It's that allies like to follow the lead of Japan. Number one, also the U.S. cred link. Number two, and adversaries perceive it as bad. The apology response doesn't take that out. Just because Japan has like real allies doesn't mean that
your explanation for that fear is because of the historical problems. If they've already apologized, that means that's solved in the act. But
obviously China's not going to accept a Japanese apology. I never said that, but that's time. Okay, we're gonna run prep. That was 1:30. Real quick, can we call for your third response on Asian War as well?
Sorry?
Can we call for the third response that you read on Asian War?
The no link about the Chang evidence?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
I sent it now.
Okay, doke. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, I got it.
That was an additional 40 seconds. So. Okay, sorry, 25 seconds left. According to my math. It's gonna begin on C1 Asia War, and then I'll find this from there. Time begins now. C1 is where you're voting in this round. Our EU evidence explains for the past 40 years, East Asia has enjoyed stability, but our Tonison evidence explains that there are fears of a resurgence in Japan for China specifically. This response is not taken up by our New York Times evidence that they say, because obviously China is not going to trust what Japan says, even if it's just in a policy. The CFR evidence explains that China has deeply rooted apprehensions, which is why our Chang evidence indicates that in 2014, when there is even a small revision, it increased the amount of grayscale attacks. We say a total revision completely changes what China wants to do and increases the chance of a miscalculation and also preemptive strike. Our sterling evidence indicates that Japan proposes a collective self-defense to remilitarize, and if it is attacked, they now have used to use like more things on nuclear weapons, which damage relations with all countries in East Asia. This revision is absolutely terrible because North Korea will likely become involved, which goes absolutely uncontested, which means that China will first strike first, which kills 2 billion people. This response doesn't take out our impact because they just say that war is accountable between allies. But remember, China is China is like an autocratic country. They can do whatever they want. On the let's address the responses. First, say that it's non-unique because they're already aggressing right now. All these aggressions are extremely low level, right? Which is why there's no, which is why they have also conceded there's been peace for the past 40 years. Number two, they say Japanese is already pacifist, but the issue is once Article 9 is revised, it is a signal to attack, and the Chinese foreign minister has explicitly stated that he will attack. China will perceive this as a threat to their sovereignty. Finally, they say there's no link to this argument because China won't do anything. Their evidence comes from 2014, but our evidence recently indicates that China believes Japan is a larger threat now, which is like even post 2014, they're increasing the amount of grayscale attacks. We say a full scale war happens. Let's talk about why this argument outweighs every single one of theirs. Number one, on building bridges, we say that if there's a internal conflict that turns nuclear, that means every country looks internally, which means no conflict actually, no alliances can actually happen. This applies to their C1, C2, and like the Middle East contention as well, along with the Security Council. But number two, we say there's increased amounts of mistrust, which also increases the amount of militarization because it encourages more nationalist views to pop up. Number three is on scope. Remember that more wars are likely to pop up because of nuclearization. When countries begin to nuclearize or there's a first strike, more countries become fearful, which increase the amount of conflict overall. Let's talk about their arguments. Number one, on building bridges, remember that right now diplomacy is working because China is more committed to peace than ever. That all changes when they adapt. On the six-side contention, our evidence postdates all of theirs. 3 days ago, there's increased amounts of sharing, which means that six-side is non-unique. On the conflict argument, remember that U.S. hedge is absolutely increasing. They just say that like U.S. cred doesn't matter, but remember, they missed the response that it takes 10 years for Japan to actually increase the amount of conventional warfare to work with the United States, which means that no matter what, during that time period, China will remain uncontested. And number two, Japan, a political elite, already pushing back. There's no reason to affirm just to change this. On the Security Council, gridlock still happens. It doesn't matter if big countries push back or not. Gridlock matters if one country says no. And finally, in the Middle East, our arguments outweigh, but even so, they're reliant on energy, so they're not going to take extreme measures to do anything, like for controversial statements, essentially.
Can we see the evidence that says that Article 9 reinterpretation increased gray zone attacks? And just one quick clarification, you said a preemptive strike kills 2 billion people or 2 million?
Oh, I said 2 billion. I extended our impact of the nuke war.
Yeah, can you send the evidence about increasing grazing attacks?
Get that for you. Sorry, I accidentally X'd out of my doc.
Please send it.
No, sorry, I accidentally X'd out of the document that has
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah. I just got it. So did you get the email? If so, we can take some prep. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'll hold up my timer. So you just unmute on our personal call. We're gonna start. That was an additional 210. So we have 15 seconds left. All right. Is everyone ready? Order sequence will be starting on Middle East, then Wang, and then their case. All right, everyone's ready, then begin. Except our Middle East argument, the argument is so clean. We see that revision will move Japan outside of US dictated policy constraints, enabling to undertake independent conflict mediation in the Middle East due to its zero historical baggage and soft power ties to the region. This is key to curb escalation in Gulf conflicts now that can lead to a use it or lose it WMD conflict, risking extinction through a radiation-caused nuclear winter. All of their responses were fully over time. They just say that we outweigh. Number one, this was over time. Two, there's no warranty on how they outweigh. And three, this isn't even responsive to our argument. Our Middle East argument is fully conceded. Even if they want to classify the rebuttal responses, they say that Japan doesn't want to intervene. It's not about a military intervention. It's about diplomacy. At that point, our argument is conceded. All the responses are over time. Let's do the weighing. If we win the weighing, we automatically win the round. One, we said that we outweigh to risk of solvency. They've already conceded from our contention one that conflicts in East Asia are inevitable due to clashes over resources like oil, meaning that all of their impacts about conflict are non-unique and the only risk of solving is affirming, meaning that their words are more likely. Analysis doesn't matter. There's no explanation as how their preemptive strike leads to a nuclear war. They just say 2 billion people. This takes out their own prerequisite. Second, we outweigh on scope because we're impacting to millions of lives dead conventionally and nuclear extinction around the globe that they concede will happen now. Well, they can't even explain how affirming leads to nuclear war, and it probably circuits their argument because of Japan is being peaceful and doing diplomacy when you affirm in areas like the Middle East. It also shows China that Japan is committed to pacifism. If Japan is committed to like diplomacy in the Middle East, they won't be like attacking China. At that point, argument is so clean. We already won our case. We already won the Wang. Let's respond to their case on China. At the top, remember in the rebuttal, they say that Japan has already apologized and told every single country that they'll pursue diplomacy. That's why China will never get scared. They said that China doesn't believe the apology. There's no reason why China isn't attacking now if they don't believe the apology. That's why they've fully conceded our analysis that says, from our evidence that says that Japan will actually increase diplomacy post-revision to show other countries that they're committed to pacifism and committed to diplomacy, because Japan and all these other countries obviously don't want war. This is fully conceded. They concede that Japan will increase diplomacy. There will be no war. That's terminal defense on their case. Second, they miss out on the uniqueness response, saying that Beijing is revisionist right now and they're already aggressing. All they say is low level, but number one, this is just an assertion. They don't give you a carded front line. But two, they fully conceded the turn, saying that once you revise Article 9, Japan can actually deter China from all of this aggressive attack. So once again, the only risk of solvency of preventing this all-out conflict is from our side, because only then can Japan deter Chinese aggression that's already happening now in the status quo. Finally, extend response that Japan will remain pacifist. They said it'll still signal China that they will attack. But remember, our evidence is very good in saying that once Japan revises, they'll include a statement in their amendment telling every single East Asian country that they will remain committed to pacifism. Insofar as that is true and insofar as that goes conceded, it means that there will be no Chinese fears, because the amendment specifically says that they will remain pacifist even after they revise. Finally, extend the impact defense. It is so good. Our evidence says that no matter what China says, in the long term, they're rationally thinking and they'll always hold restraint. They'll never do a preemptive nuclear strike, because China will never want to do escalation on with like the United States and Japan whatsoever. Their evidence about 2014, says that China was already attacking before reinterpretation, which takes out their own case. They can see that Japan will never nuclearize because of vetoes. No link to nuclear war. Case is conceded. Vote F.
All right. Are you ready for
Yeah.
crossfire? Yeah.
Yeah, you got first question.
So,
Okay, actually, Allison, can I take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in your summary, you tell me that China clearly believes that Japan is going to remain pacifist, which is why they're not attacking. And then you tell me that Beijing is attacking.
No.
So-
So what William was saying, and he can corroborate that, is your front lines is saying they were already apologizing was they don't trust Japan. So if they don't trust Japan now, they should already be attacking. Our response to
I mean, they don't trust the Japanese statement, but they probably trust the Japanese like constitution, right? Like,
okay, exactly. That's our exact argument. Thank you for saying that. William's response he extends is that Japan would create and keep and implement a pacifist subclause after Article 9 revision to enshrine in their constitution to show they would never aggress. So as per your analysis, the China trust Japan's
Article 9?
constitution.
Tell me what the difference is between adopting Article or changing Article 9 and not changing Article 9. It's preemptive strike because
no, it's not. Article 9 never specifies. The judges can pull up the text of Article 9. Yeah. It never says a preemptive strike. It says offensive war capabilities. All that affirming does is increase revision and allow for offensive capabilities. No. Our argument is when you
counterattack now, right?
One second. Can I just finish? Yeah. Our argument is when they do that, they implement a subclause in the amendment that says they will remain pacifist and not aggress against other countries. So if you just said that China trusts the Japanese constitution, our argument is pretty clean in the idea that it disproves the argument that China aggresses when you
I don't
affirm.
understand the difference between like not having having Article 9 as it is now and then changing Article 9, but then saying that like, no, we're not
Like,
going to use offensive.
It's
So,
just
like,
saying,
for example,
there's literally no
it's
difference.
saying offensive capabilities. You're just saying you're not going to be aggressing against countries and you're trying to maintain a pacifist stance.
You're like contradicting yourself left and right, because in the
No.
previous crossfire, okay, just hear me out, right?
Yeah.
In the previous crossfire, you explicitly stated that the difference between offense and defense is offense can preemptively strike, while defense can only
No.
react to everything. Just hear me out.
Yeah.
If this is true, that means that a change in Article 9, which is inherently going from defense to offense, means that Japan has the ability to preemptively strike. It doesn't matter if there's a singular clause about being pacifist, if they can now shift to offensive military weapons, which
Like,
you yourself say
we-
are preemptively striking countries.
We never like advocated for a preemptive strike, but it's very
You
simple
did,
analysis.
but-
Even if they get an offensive capability, it doesn't mean they automatically aggress, right? The
Sure.
US, Canada, all other countries around the world have offensive capabilities, but they just don't go out immediately when develop them and start a war. Our argument is Japan would make that clear in its constitution and say it would remain as
Don't you have
pacifist
civil
as
wars?
possible.
I mean, the US definitely has aggressed.
Taking a step
Well-
back, irrespective of how this debate resolves, you've also conceded the uniqueness, saying that conflicts are already inevitable right now in the status quo due to these
So-
oil conflicts, meaning that the only risk of solvency is by affirming.
Like, again, this doesn't take out our case because our arguments are specific to nuclear weapons. Your arguments are
Wait.
specific to economic turmoil, which we ourselves explain.
No, our
in
argument is a
some
war
respects.
happens. You didn't extend how your world leads to a nuclear war.
Neither
War
did
happens in
you.
either world.
Yeah, wait, you just kind of assert that the Middle East is going to start bombing each other.
Yeah, I did.
You
No,
have,
our
like, a
evidence says
scenario.
that we extend a
If
link
we're
that
really
says it.
talking about impact,
Yeah.
like materialization, you probably have even less. You just
I mean,
told me
we
that US,
extend the
Iran, and
internal
Saudi
link.
Arabia
I think
we-
we're like
are gonna
we
go
extend
to war.
The internal link is conceded.
Okay,
We
yeah, we're over
extend.
time. We're over time. Okay, Alice and I are going to take the remaining 25 seconds of our.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I got that as 25.
Yeah, we're ready. Okay, order's going to be the Wang debate, our case, their case. Everyone ready? Cool. It's going to start on the Wang that Allison did, and then it's going to go on to the Wang that the AF team did. Everyone's ready. Time starts now. Every single piece of Allison's weighing is conceded. Start with the short circuit. Remember that there's literally no place for international agreements when there's an all-out war, because every country looks inwards towards economic despair and towards like massive catastrophe. So they don't actually start mediating. That short circuits their entire Middle East arguments. On scope, remember that we outweigh because both the United States and China have massive nuclear arsenals, where most of the Middle East does not, which means that a nuclear devastation in their case would not kill 2 billion people, it wouldn't kill that many, whereas ours literally devastates the entire world. On mistrust, they have conceded that it takes 10 years for Japan to develop offensive military capabilities, during which time they have conceded that US credibility goes down immensely, which causes all allies of the United States to lose credibility in the US and militarize. This leads to a massive arms race in the Middle East, which increases the mistrust. This means that there is more need for mediation, which they haven't proved Japan can solve. Then, on Asian war, their one response is just uniqueness. They say that China is aggressing now, but China is not aggressing now, or they're aggressing really low level, because the Thornton evidence, which they concede, tells you that all gray zone attacks are relatively low level. They just increase when Japan starts to revise its constitution, but insofar as a total revision has not happened yet, there hasn't been a total war. Then, they said that China would trust an apology. There's no warrant as to why China would trust an apology. Also, there's no warranting as to why Japan would include a pacifist clause in its constitution that's nowhere in the PF resolution. In addition, there's no warranting as to how that is different than now. When you shift the resolution, or when you shift the constitution of Japan from going defensive to the ability to preemptively strike with offensive forces, that worries Japan, because our sterling evidence finds that China is massively mistrustful of Japan post-World War II and will perceive any revision as massive remilitarization regardless of their amendment. That's critical because this turns cold tensions in the regions completely hot, which they have conceded, which leads to a nuclear war. on their case, they've conceded so much. On the probability weighing, we said that we have an inherently better probability because they've conceded that other actors mediate in the Middle East from their case. They haven't really extended a reason as to why Japan is unique. Also, they concede the Solomon evidence, which says that Japan is mediating now, and they concede Allison's response that actually says that like Japan isn't going to get that involved because they are dependent on the Middle East for like oil and other natural gas reserves. They're also losing the weighing. It's conceded. It's game over.
Okay, 15 seconds of prep left. I will hold my timer to show when we start. Solely unmute on our call. Okay, we're gonna start.
It's just going to be weighing our case and their case. Let's begin now. Judges, do not let my opponents trick you that the weighing was conceded. Not a single piece of weighing was conceded. Let's start on the weighing. They concede the risk of solvency. They have dropped the fact that conflicts in East Asia are inevitable due to clashes over resources, meaning all their impacts are non-unique. We respond to their short circuit. There is no explanation as to how a preemptive strike leads to a nuclear war. They just say 2 billion. This takes out the prerequisite because there's no link into it. Secondly, remember scope. We are impacting to a nuclear extinction that they concede will happen now. They can't explain how affirming it's a nuclear war. And remember the short circuit that goes dropped. If Japan is peaceful and doing diplomacy when you affirm, it shows Japan is committed to pacifism. They read new scope weighing. Our impact evidence call for it. Says global powers get involved in the Middle East and at least to use it or lose it with WMDs and leads to extinction. They read a thing about U.S. influence. This is completely new. They have dropped the term that affirming reallocates resources to Asian allies, increasing U.S. influence. This is all new. Don't let them go for it. What is not new is our beautifully conceded Middle East argument. Revision would move Japan outside of the U.S. dictated policy constraints, enabling it to undertake independent conflict mediation in the Middle East due to zero historical baggage and soft power ties in the region. This is key to curb escalating Gulf conflicts now that can use a lose it or use that can lead to a use it or lose it WMD conflict risk extinction to radiation caused nuclear war. They go for a Hail Mary by extending a bunch of dropped responses that were extended. Remember, our evidence says because of Article 9 they can't do diplomacy now, which is why conflict is increasing. Remember, Japan is uniquely key, can only do diplomacy because they have zero historical baggage in the region and soft power ties, which is why our argument isn't that Japan intervenes, it increases diplomacy to prevent conflict. Go to their case. Remember, they have no evidence saying conflicts are small scale now. Our evidence is Japanese hegemony is being unchecked and they're expanding and increasing wars, which is why, like they say in Cross, China trusts Japan's constitution. So our evidence says they would include a pacifist subclause when they revise Article 9 to say they won't be aggressing. So as per their analysis, and as per our analysis, Japan increases cooperation. Our evidence includes China will not aggress. Lastly, remember, our evidence says that regardless of what China says, they will always act with restraint and not start a war with Japan. This impact evidence is way too clean. And remember that our evidence says Japan will never proliferate, meaning their link into nuclearization doesn't happen whatsoever because of veto players. Too much drop defense. Vote for our case. It's way cleaner.
Good round.
Good round, y'all.
Good
And
round.
thank you for judging.
And congratulations.
Well done, guys.
Well done, round. We'll take a couple minutes to deliver.
Okay, is everyone here? I was the last judge to submit. Okay. So congratulations to both teams for making it this far. You should all be incredibly proud of yourselves. This is a fantastic achievement. But it does end up being a 2-1 decision for the AF. And I actually didn't squirrel. So whoever sat, do you want to go first? Or I can go, it doesn't matter.
I'll just say I just I think I was obviously the late judge of the three of us. I just bought I first of all, I was able to understand Allison's case the most right out of the gate. I was able to follow her the best. So more for the information for me sank in right from the jump. I also thought that they handled Crossfire in both cases better. I felt that both William and Sully were asking for first try capabilities for sure, and that they should have just laid into it and accept that yes you are, rather than saying no it wasn't, and that really stuck with me. So that's it.
Sure, I could go next. So I affirmed on the AF case, pretty much everything that the neg goes for is extended through ink, and the AF is winning the Middle East argument pretty cleanly. The only possible response that I get from the neg is this incredibly blippy argument that Japan is reliant on oil and might not do that much mediation, but a bunch of things like it's frontlined in rebuttal, it's extended through ink, and there's also no articulation of how dependent they are or how much this actually prevents diplomacy. So like the response also actually concedes that diplomacy happens in the first place, and there's just not enough work done on that response. Like you need to just spend a lot more time on it, I think, and it's not fleshed out whatsoever. At this point, the weighing from the AF is functionally dropped, and I buy that an East Asian war might be inevitable and there's higher risk of solvency in the Middle East. And also I think there's a really smart prerequisite that that diplomacy increases after revision, which preempts an aggressive Chinese response. So then when I'm looking at the neg case, I think that Churchill is behind starting in summary because there's no front line to the third turn saying that Japan increases diplomacy to reaffirm their pacifism after Article 9 revision. The first front line to this comes in Final Focus, which is too late anyway, and it's not really fleshed out whatsoever. I think that the response from the AF is pretty well warranted. I also think that the AF does a really good job backlining the other responses on the neg case. And by the end of the round, I perceive very little risk coming off of the neg argument. The short circuit analysis from the neg is there in both summary and Final Focus, but it's dependent on the full extent of your war occurring. And I think that there's both sufficient defense from the AF and no articulation from the neg as to why I should prefer any risk of the short circuit happening over the AF case. Finally, on the US credibility argument that the neg kind of extends in Final Focus, I think a few things. Like first, it's super blippy. Also, it's extended through ink. And I think the articulation of the internal link and impact scenario feels very new, and it's also not weighed. So at the end of the day, I find it pretty easy to affirm.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those sentiments. I am flowing the defense on the Mideast is over time. In the summary, I really was focused on that exact thing. The argument definitely started completely over time. So I am definitely granting some risk of solvency for an impact that goes to escalation in WMDs, which would at least be comparable to anything coming off of the East Asia scenario. On the East Asia scenario, I am buying that the simple no link is there. I think that in sort of a big picture sense, it was always going to be an uphill battle to try to sell that, well, China's just going to ignore the promises being made and continue to act, and all this link scenario is going to happen from that, when you're insisting that those very same promises are being taken seriously that do all sorts of other things. It's an uphill battle, right, from the get-go. But even independent of that, I think that there are some answers that, the simple Japan won't proliferate. That's an answer to that. I think that, Japan, where's the other one I'm flowing? Well, anyways, there's other, also the pacifism clause thing. I think that this is a brand new argument being made for the first time in Final Focus. If like the way to contest that is much earlier in the round, sort of on like a debate theory level, that it's either extra topical or they're, you know, creating an advocacy that's beyond the resolution, something to that extent. But in any way, I do think that there are reasons on the flow being made that Japan's not going to proliferate. So I'm not giving any risk of offense to the AF on that. Even if I did, then I think the non-unique that East Asian conflict is inevitable comes into play. And that would be a reason to preference solvency coming off the Mideast scenario. So even if I were to grant some risk, I still think I'm going to end up voting AF. I do think that the military realist arguments is a source of offense that I would have liked AF to make more prominently. Like, I think the place where it's made the best, like, is in the cross-ex. Like, you got to watch out in the cross-ex when all you're doing is giving the other side a better chance to like articulate their position, and which I think is what happened in that second cross-ex. But I would have liked the AF to apply that analysis a little bit more. I really think that was probably the biggest source of strength actually for the round. You know, when you're making really good analysis about, it doesn't matter promises or what they say, or, you know, that isn't what's relevant. It's the structural realist components that are in place. And that's why we need to affirm. That's a really strong argument. And so I feel like if you're going to be able to make that answer in cross-ex, then you should be making that answer in case, and then you should be selling it as a voter in rebuttal. So that's what I thought of the round. Are there any questions from anybody? Excellent round. Definitely deserving of an Octa's round at the TOC. So both debaters hats off. All right, well, then that's all I have to say. Then congratulations, a hand clap for everybody. Pleasure judging this round and a pleasure judging with this panel, and I wish all the best of luck.
All right,
Thank you
thank
so
y'all.
much.
Right.
You
Good luck in your next round.
Thank you.